Well, welcome everyone to the Business Bubbly podcast. Today, you guys are going to love our guest, Monica Tanner. Monica, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for our conversation.
Yay, Charity. Thanks for having me. I have been looking forward to this for a long time.
Same. So, you guys, listeners, Monica and I, we have been friends for, I don't know, maybe a year or two. We were connected through another mutual friend and through a couple, like through another really great, amazing event. Powerhouse Women with Lindsay Schwartz, and we had a great time. And we come to find out we like live in the same city, and so we were able just to connect a handful of times. And she just came out with a new book, and so I was like, okay, you have to come be on the podcast. We have to have this really great conversation about it. So I'm excited. So I'm gonna read your bio, Monica, and then I have a question for you when we to kick us off. So Monica, she is an RLT trained relationship coach and host of the Secrets of Happily Ever After podcast. She transforms marriages with simple communication, connection, conflict resolution, and commitment strategies, which, hello, I mean, we all need, even in friend relationships, in any relational dynamic.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. Monica's mission is to lower the divorce rate and improve marital satisfaction through her engaging podcast, new book, Bad Marriage Advice, vibrant social media community, and couples coaching practice. Monica's expert guidance has impacted thousands of couples by helping them ditch resentment and roommate syndrome and get back to living their happily ever after love story. Monica, I'm so excited.
I love how you slowed that down at the end because it's really important.
It is. It is. I love love and I love marriage and I love connection and relationship and communication and all of this stuff. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. But before we dive into some of this juicy stuff, I would love to know, before all of that fancy stuff happens that you now help people with, we obviously know that there's like some of that stuff you probably had to learn the hard way. So, what do you wish, looking back, what do you wish, knowing what you know now, what do you wish you would have known then?
Oh, such a good question. And one I get asked in different forms often. Um, it's a hard question because the reality is I wouldn't change anything. I feel like all the lessons that I needed to learn, though painful, I needed to learn them in the way that I learned them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be as impactful. I wouldn't be able to use them to help others. So I love the way that I learned all the different things that I learned. But really, the answer to your question, what I wish I had known back then, is mostly what I wrote in my book. And the book, Bad Marriage Advice, I wrote it for my son and his new bride. They're getting married in just a few weeks. And I wanted to be able to give them kind of like a cautionary tale meets beginner's guide because I know they're very young and they're going to get lots of marriage advice. And I remember when I was very young and getting married and getting lots of marriage advice, a lot of it was really bad marriage advice that if somebody had written this book way back then, it would have saved me a lot of heartache and a lot of sleep. So that was the reason why I wrote this book. So Bad Marriage Advice is just a compilation of a lot of the advice I got when I was first getting married that I was like, man, I had to learn the hard way that it wasn't the best advice.
Yeah. Okay. So, what was the worst piece of advice that you got?
There's so much. So, the worst advice I think that affected my marriage the most was don't go to bed angry because I clung to that. And my husband, like, we would get in these picky little fights early in our marriage, late at night, because we were both so exhausted. And he would just roll over and go to sleep, where I was like, no, I'm upset. Like, we've got to hash this out. And he would just be like, go to bed, Monica. Right? And I was like, he's going to wake up in the morning and he's going to be like, this is too much trouble. She's crazy. Like, I'm out of here. Like, it would trigger my abandonment issues like crazy. And I would just spiral and he'd be over there snoring. And I was like, this is crazy. So I lost so much sleep in the first few years of our marriage, trying very hard to follow that marriage advice until one day when I just communicated with him and I was like, here's the reason why it is so hard for me to turn over and go to sleep when we're not getting along. It's because it triggers all of these abandonment issues inside of me. And my mind just spirals. And I think that you're thinking all of these terrible things, and you're going to wake up in the morning and be like, this is more trouble than it's worth. I'm out of here. He was like, well, I'm not ever going to do that. It's literally not in my programming. Right. And I was like, okay, but it's hard to like really process that late at night. And he was like, okay, how about if I say something like, I'm not going anywhere, but this is, I can't talk about this right now because I'm really too tired. Let's chat about it in the morning. And I was like, that would be amazing. And so then he did it. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, he loves me. He's not going to wake up and like leave me. And so I can just go to bed. And what would happen is every time this happened, he would roll over in the morning, snuggle me real tight, and be like, I'm sorry I was being a jerk last night. I was just really tired. Or I have no idea what was happening last night. I can't even remember the details, but I'm so sorry. Right. And he would do that all the time. And I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome that A, I've gotten a good night's rest. And B, he's like so repentant in the morning. I don't even have to apologize or think about it. And if something did rub me the wrong way, I can say, thanks for your apology. This was really hard for me. Or, like when you say that such and such, like I really get worked up about it or whatever, and we'll always work it out. And so, like, eliminating that bad marriage advice, it was like the best thing ever.
I love this conversation because that is something that we hear all the time, right? And
Yeah, it's so cliche.
something struck me about that advice that actually is useful. And here's the thing where I think we like it's put out there in the wrong way compared to what will actually be useful. And it's like, right, for me and what I believe, it's like, oh, don't let the sun go down on your anger, or right, don't go to
Yes.
bed angry. But my emotions are my responsibility, not anybody
Yeah.
else's. And so I might be feeling frustrated or angry or whatever else, but it's not my husband's job to fix my emotions. It's not his job to like try and like, console my emotions or whatever that is. Like those are my like that is like an inside job. So, oh, what if we now started to understand don't let the sun go down on your anger, or don't go to bed angry. Oh, it's actually my responsibility to figure this out internally. And why am I angry? And why am I triggered? Are there times where there's discussion for that? Absolutely. But what if I took responsibility for my emotions and I sorted it out without the need for having these long, drawn out, whatever conversations at night? So I don't know. That was just like, yeah.
No, that is such an important perspective. In fact, I might like go and add that and like credit you because that's a great way of thinking about it. You're right. Like it's not my spouse's responsibility to
Yeah.
manage my emotions, it's mine, And still, sometimes it's really hard to manage your emotions when you're exhausted at the end of the day. So if you wake up in the morning and you go, man, why was that triggering or what was so hard about that? It's still going to be easier in the morning with the perspective and the kind of space
Yeah.
to figure that out. So,
Totally.
so good, Charity. Thank you for adding that because that is a really, really great point.
Yeah. Well, and I even love the conversation of we hear it all the time, and it's the, oh, you made me feel angry, or you made me feel like this. And it's like,
Right.
nope, like you might have done
I
something,
made myself.
felt about it.
Exactly. Which
Why?
is a really important marriage skill that I teach. It's like really important. Like it's like called the skill of repair. And there's four statements that you make. The first one is what I heard or saw. The second one is how I made myself feel, or the story I'm telling about what I heard or saw, right? We take responsibility of, here's how I interpreted that, and it could be not correct, and it could be not how it was intended, but I'm taking responsibility because this is what made that mean, right?
Yeah. No, that's so good. Oh, I want to go on this little tangent of when you just said this is not what I intended. Okay. So the whole, okay, there's intentions, and then there obviously is the actual action. And whether or not they are the same, right, there can be a
Yeah.
difference in that. And so I think a lot of times, and you can speak to this for sure as well, but a lot of times we can judge things based off of our intentions, but then other people's actions. Or, it's like, for example, so we don't wear shoes in the house. This is like a really easy little example. We don't wear shoes in the house. And so it's like, oh, they just like start to pile up against the, right by the door, by
By the front door. Yeah.
Yes. And me loving the shoes and having all the shoes that I do, I can wear like 3, 4, 5 pairs of shoes in one day. And so my intentions are good, and to not wear these shoes in the house and, oh, I'll pick those up, maybe in the evening or maybe tomorrow I'll pick. My intentions are good, but then my actions just start to show, oh, there's like 4 pairs of shoes by the door, Charity. Why haven't you picked them up? Like, right. So that's like a very easy, light-hearted example. But I think that there can be this difference between, oh, okay, my intentions and what my actions say. And what would you say, whether it's in marriage, whether it is in relational dynamics of friendships, or in, even coworkers or other entrepreneurial connections that people make in networking? How would you say, or what would you suggest when it comes to like even bridging the gap of what your intentions are and what your actions might be?
So I love this question because I think one of the most valuable skills that a couple can possess, but you can use this literally in any relationship. You can use this with your kids, you can use this with your friendships, you can use this in a co-working relationship. And that is the skill of repair. So a lot of times when couples will come to see me and they're really struggling, one of the first things that becomes very apparent is that they don't have an effective mechanism of repair. And so the skill that I just started kind of teaching that I think would be awesome for all of your listeners, and it is just a very succinct way of repairing. So I'll set it up by saying one of the most important parts of it is that it's very quick. So the last thing you want is your spouse to be like, "Oh crap, like here we go. Here's 45 minutes of like totally being torn down and told what I'm doing wrong, and like having to try and fix all the things, right?" And she's gonna just because we're probably talking to a lot of women, right? She's probably gonna list out like 10 years worth of grievances that I'm gonna have to defend against, right? So you want to avoid that. So one of the most important parts of this repair process is that it's going to be quick. It's like 8 sentences long. You like that's all you get, right? So another important part to set it up is remembering love. I feel like this is a really important part of any communication that you're going to have with anyone that you care about. It's remember who you're talking to. So if you're doing it with your spouse, remembering that this is the person that you love, like the most in the whole wide world, and that, you have to live with them, and, that you're remembering who you're talking to and remembering why you're talking to them because you want to make things better for both of you. So that's remembering love. And then contracting is really important. So you definitely don't want to ambush your spouse or your best friend or your coworker when they're in the middle of something stressful. They just got home after a long day. They're working on a project, they're wrestling with your 2-year-old. You like want to make sure that it's a good time that you can get their undivided attention for a few minutes to do this. Though that's like to set it up. And then, so what contracting sounds like is like, "Hey, hun," or "Hey, friend, I need some repair," or "I know I've noticed something that keeps coming up. Is now a good time to talk about it?" Now, if you're doing the repair process well, they know that it's not going to be 3 hours, it's going to be like 10 minutes. And that, yeah, if they are properly prepared, that it's going to go well. So, they can say, let me grab something to eat and change my clothes, and then I'll be totally up for it. Or they can be like, sure, now is a great time. Okay. So then so there's four parts of this repair process. The first part is what I saw. So this is what security cam footage would report. It's not like you're not making any assumptions. You're not like, it's not coming from your story. It's like literally what you saw. So, like, hey, Charity, I noticed that most days there's like 6 pairs of shoes by the door. That is what the security cam footage would pick up, right? Okay, your next sentence is the story I make up about that is that you don't really care about keeping our house clean, or the story I make up about that is if, our friends were to come visit, they would be like, why is there a pile of shoes right here? Like it's, yeah, okay. So the story you made up about it, and you can say pretty much anything you want right there, as long as you take responsibility for it. So you can say, the story I make up about it is that you don't care about me. The story I make up about it is that you're selfish and lazy. You can say most things as long as you take responsibility because it's the story you're making up about it. And then the next part is how I feel about that is frustrated. Maybe because we've had this conversation before, because I've pointed out to you, I've asked you a million times, right? It makes me feel frustrated, not cared for, whatever. So, how you feel about it. And then the last part, which might be the most important, is what I'd like to feel better now is that you go and pick up the shoes and that you make a very concerted effort to at least by 5 o'clock each day, put your shoes away. Like, I would really appreciate that. Okay, so that's the whole repair process. It can be as short as 4 sentences or as long as 8 sentences, but you don't want to go over that. And so that's the speaker part of it. And the listener part of it is just as important and takes just as much practice as getting good as the speaker part. So, one of the things I had to teach my husband is that when one partner asks for repair, they are at the customer service window. So the other partner does not get to also air their grievances. You only get to go one at a time. It's a one-way street. So, like, it would be, for example, if my oven was broken and I went to the customer service window and I was like, my oven's broken, and the customer service representative was like, well, my microwave is broken. So what are we going to do? Right? That was happening to me and my husband all the time. Like, I would be like, can I talk to you about something? I'm really frustrated about this thing. And my husband would be like, yeah, well, I'm really frustrated about this other thing. And then we would just go the rounds and it like wasn't effective in any way. And then I would end up sad and he would end up sad and we accomplished nothing. And so I had to like do the repair process to teach him about the repair process. And once he understood that, he was like, oh, that's really good. So it's not that the other partner can't ever have a turn. It's just that if I initiate repair, it's my turn. Let's solve my problem. And then 2 hours later or whatever, you can initiate repair. So, and then the other part of the listener is to understand what the partner in asking for repair is asking for, and then to give as generously as humanly possible. So if you were listening to my repair request about the shoes, for you to be able to say, you know what, I will go pick up my shoes right now. I will put them all away. And I would love to, by 5 o'clock every day, clean up my shoes, but there are going to be days when I forget. So if you could just kindly remind me, say, hey, if you could just say, hey, Charity, I noticed there's a big pile of shoes piling up by the front door. Would you mind putting your shoes away? And I can be like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. I don't mind at all. Right. So it's that back and forth of repair where you are really trying to understand your partner and how you can make it better.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that because I feel like in marriage, in any relationship, understanding how to repair is one of the most important things, right? Because no one is perfect. We're going to mess up. We are like, we're gonna leave shoes by the door or whatever little habit that we start to pick up. And it's like in these interdependent relationships, not codependent, not independent, in these interdependent relationships, how do we coexist and commingle and make this work for everyone? And it's so good. So I'm assuming, and like to be transparent, like Chris and I, we've been through really, really hard times and we had to learn things like this. We had to learn how to argue. We had to, in a good, in a healthy and a productive way, we had to
Yeah.
learn how to not do the criticizing thing and you, and this is how I'm feeling, and the listener and the speaker and all of that fun stuff. And so, but it took a while to be able to get there. Now, I am
Hmm.
assuming there are probably people that are listening to this where like they're like, I don't know, like maybe I feel like maybe my marriage or even a friendship is beyond repair. What do you say to those people?
Hey, just a quick little invitation here for you to give one of my new favorite products a try. It's called Glossy. And if you know anything about me, that you know that I love to share things that I love. I love to talk about the things that I love that I'm using, whether it's new products, new services, fun books that I'm sharing about. So I'm always on the hunt for new products that help with high performance, that help me not only as a business owner, as a founder, as a speaker, as a podcaster, and even as a mom feel better, but it's got to be able to fit into my daily routine. And I have found one that is like my new obsession. It's called Glossy. It's a skin and a gut daily ritual supplement. It's a skin routine that you can drink. Not only does it taste amazing, like a light, refreshing lemon spa water that I could drink all day, seriously, but it's making me feel so recharged and like I'm feeding my body and skin everything it needs to keep up with me and my goals. It has a clinically studied probiotic in it that survives the trip to your gut so that you know that it's working, along with hyaluronic acid, which is incredible for glowy, hydrated look to your skin. And on top of that, it's loaded with skin-loving ingredients like zinc, magnesium, vitamin C, coconut water powder, minerals, electrolytes, and antioxidants. It's how I love to actually start my day as well as end my day, because when I wake up in the morning, I actually get the feeling that I feel less bloated, which, hello, is amazing. So for real, this is a game changer, especially if you travel, if you're busy, and if you have to have something that help you support your body while you are going after your big ideas. So if you want glowing skin and a happy gut, go grab your subscription because it's the best results take 30 to 60 days. You can go to getglossy.com. That's GETGLOCI.com and use my coupon code CharityMajors for an awesome discount. Now, understand that this product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. But again, that's all the official legal stuff, right? Go to getglossy.com and grab your skin and gut supplement because great skin starts from within. That's at getglossy, GETGLOCI.com, and use my coupon code CharityMajors. Grab your subscription today. You are going to love it. I have no doubt. Go to getglossy.com and use the coupon code CharityMajors. Now back to the show.
Well, yeah, that's tough because, I see couples who, where you're talking about years and years, even decades of resentment building up. And so it is easy to fall into that, like, this is beyond repair, or, the grievance or the thing that happened feels too big to be able to forgive or work through. Like, we're talking about adultery or, some sort of abuse or addiction or something like that. So I can definitely understand feeling that way, feeling like this is too big, it's beyond repair. But I recommend getting some help to see if it's something that you can work through. Because a lot of times your stories, that part that what I make up about this, they get really, really big. And especially when you're talking about your brain's job is to find what give it to look for, right? So if your story has gotten really big, like my spouse is so lazy, they don't care about me, they completely disregard all, everything about me and what's important to me. And you've been telling yourself that story for 10 years. You've got 10 years worth of evidence to support that story.
Right.
And sometimes, and I've seen this in the clients that I've worked with, sometimes changing that story or being able to just let a, a little different perspective in just a tiny bit so that maybe you can find some evidence that doesn't support that story is enough to turn things around enough to fix it. And so I'm not saying that every relationship is fixable or every relationship should stay together. I definitely have clients that have chosen to separate. However, I do think it's worth the effort to see if somebody can kind of help you see things from a different perspective. So I would definitely recommend if you feel like your marriage is beyond fixing or a friendship is beyond fixing, even, I recommend an RLT trained therapist or coach because they are trained to help you see a dynamic that may or may not be workable and you can decide, but it's best to have kind of see all of those different perspectives before you make a final decision.
Yeah, that's so good. So I love this concept of we can teach what we know, but we impart what we have experienced, right? And the example that I
Mm,
use is that
I
there's
like that.
a lot of business professors teaching business who have never had a business, right? So it's a lot
Yeah, interesting.
head knowledge and book knowledge, but not necessarily this heart knowledge, right? So we can
Hmm.
teach what we know, but we can impart what we live, what we can impart what we've experienced. So, what would you say? And maybe it's through a really, really hard time that you had in your marriage. What would you say that you like the impartation that you carry? Not just a lesson that you could teach someone, not just a formula that you could teach someone, but this energetic impartation that you carry when you speak to someone about marriage. Like, I know that there's a story,
Yeah,
so I want to hear it.
yeah. Such a great question because that's really true. One of the tenets of RLT that I absolutely love is that we don't present ourselves when I'm working with clients. I am not the expert. Like, I am not the one with all of the knowledge. Like, I am a fellow traveler right along with this couple, right? Like, I'm experiencing difficulties and learning new skills and honing my knowledge through experience, like just like this couple is, right? But, I've been married for 23 years. I have four children that are all in different stages of like one's moved out and getting married soon, one's graduating this next month, and I've got, a middle schooler and a schooler still at home. My husband and I have been through very difficult seasons of life, especially my postpartum and like different bouts of anxiety that I've gone through that I think stem from my experiences growing up and my abandonment issues and my need to like prove myself in order to like, I mean, I grew up with the feeling that like you have to earn love. Like it's not just freely given. And my husband grew up completely opposite. Like he's always believed there's enough love. And so it was like very hard for him to understand my experience of like, if I don't do this perfectly, or, if I don't figure this out, like people are going to withdraw love from me. That's how I operated for so long.
What did
And
that
it was something that my husband never experienced.
what did that look like in your daily life or your daily like thought process? Like, take us a little bit deeper than the surface of, oh, I
Yeah.
perform for love.
Well, so I grew up in a Jewish household my whole life. Like my whole lineage is Jewish. And so my family celebrated Hanukkah. And, I was baptized and became a Christian while I was in college. And then I met my husband. And we started having children relatively quickly after we had gotten married, and we started a business together. So we had a business, we were building a new home. We had a couple of children at this point, and I really felt like unless I showed up perfectly in all of these things, like I did all my business responsibilities, I kept my house clean, my children were happy, like all of these things were a measure of whether or not my husband loved me. And it was a really hard feeling because, as you probably know very well, you can't do anything perfect with a newborn and a toddler and, running a business, and it's all too much. And I wasn't doing anything perfectly. And so I used to have these just meltdowns. And then the holidays would come around, and I felt so much responsibility to like create this magical Christmas that I had no experience with. And I had friends who were so good at this. And they would create this magical environment in their home around Christmas. They would have these beautifully decorated trees and fireplaces, and they would hand stitch their kids' names onto their stockings. I mean, all the things. And I would be like, I don't know how this works. And I would just break down in tears. It would get towards Christmas, and like I was inconsolable. And my husband would be like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like what you're doing is fine. Like please just stop crying, right? But
Like,
I didn't know how to do all the things. And I was certain that it wasn't perfect. And I was certain that it wasn't good enough. And I was certain that all the people that were around me were just going to be like, she's a total like imposter. Like she has no idea I was so worried that everyone was going to catch on that I had no idea what I was doing, that it literally would render me incapacitated. Like I couldn't get dressed, I couldn't take care of my kids, I couldn't do my responsibilities, and it was all right here.
yeah, in your head. So
Yeah, and it was all lies.
what was the journey like out of that?
Well, I'm grateful for my mom because my mom, so this goes back to your prior question, my mom had experienced all of this.
Yeah.
My mom, when I was 12 years old, my parents got a divorce. And my mom literally like withdrew from her entire life for 5 years. She went to Oregon. So we're from Texas. She went to Oregon and she literally spent 5 years figuring out who she was and what the source of love came from. She basically like joined nudist colonies and journaled and like was like on her own and like was like figured out yoga and like went on this journey of self-discovery. And she wounded like that, her doing that wounded me in the same way that she was wounded. But because she healed from that, she had a reservoir of knowledge and so much to be able to share with me. And I remember going through a particularly really difficult time where I wasn't able to care for myself or my children. And my husband was like, it is too hard for me to do everything while you are here. And so he sent me home to Texas to live with my mom for like a week or something. And his mom like took care of the kids. And, he was we were building a business and it was crazy. But being with my mom for that week was so good for me because she was able to impart to me her experience without me having to blow up my life like she blew up her life. Like it was such a gift. Like it was such a difficult thing for me to experience in my life, that it was such a gift that she had learned what she needed to learn to be able to save me from the same type of pain. So And that's where I kind of learned that your parents' story is not necessarily your story. And all of the pain and all of the like hardships that we go through are for a reason. And it's so that we can like turn around and help somebody else get through it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love to say that so for us as moms, right, what we fight for, our kids get for free. It sounds like that's what your mom was able
Ah.
to do for you. So what then from that impartation from your mom, what began to change for you?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, I really started to understand my relationship to heavenly parents, like who I really am and what I am truly capable of. And that doesn't mean that it all went away like immediately, but it made it more manageable. And I realized that like the Savior's atonement and like my weaknesses were all made whole. And so I learned how to depend on like deity, right? Like I learned that I could go to my Heavenly Father in prayer, that I could atone for, that I could these weaknesses of mine, my heavenly parents love me unconditionally. And so, and I experienced that through how I loved my children, right? Like I know that my children, I love them in all of their imperfections, and they have to learn to crawl and then to walk and then to run, just like I needed to. And so I started to see kind of the shift was that things happened for me and not to me. And so all these really difficult things that I went through as a teenager and growing up, and they all were for me to show me my strength and my resilience and to give me this gift that I now could pass on to my own kids. So, it was kind of cool to see my mom pass her gifts down to me. And now I don't know the challenges that my children are going to face, but they will face challenges. And I know that I am their mom for a reason. And I know that I will do everything in my power to impart my knowledge and experience onto them.
Yeah. So then what would you say impartation wise that you're able to impart to couples who come to see you?
Yeah. Well, just that 23 years worth of struggle and learning how to communicate. And I would say that my husband and I are so very different. We come from different parts of the country, we come from different religious backgrounds. Our experiences growing up in our families would not possibly be more opposite. But we found each other and we created this family together. And we've learned how to communicate our differences in a way that strengthens and like collaboration rather than tears us apart. And so I think, you know, the importance of being able to communicate different ideas and to come up with something together that's better than either one of you could have possibly on your own is what I help couples do. Is this learning to communicate in a way of collaboration and teamwork rather than compromise and tearing down.
I love that. So as we round this out, so obviously your new book, we want to make sure that people know where to find you, follow you, get your new book, all of the fun things. And so before you share, I want you to share one more quick bad marriage advice that you heard and what you learned was better advice.
Yeah. Well, I think that what goes best with what we've been talking about is this idea of don't sweat the small stuff. You hear that all the time. Or happy wife, happy life. They kind of are interchangeable and go together. Like, or don't compromise. So I just give you three. So don't sweat the small stuff, learn how to compromise, and happy wife, happy life. All of those stunt communication. They encourage really lazy communication because it's easy to just say, "Oh, my wife is always right. She makes all the decisions. She wears the pants, blah, blah, blah. As long as she's happy, we're all happy," right? It's easy to say that. The don't sweat the small stuff is silly because the small stuff becomes big stuff. Like, let's deal with the seeds before it becomes weeds. And that's where the repair process really comes in. And then what was the other one I said? I forgot. Oh, learn how to compromise, right? Like marriage requires a lot of compromise. No, it doesn't. Compromise sucks. Compromise means I give up stuff and you give up stuff and we meet in the middle and neither of us is fully happy. Learn to collaborate, which means I learn what's really important to you, and you learn what's really important to me. And we take both perspectives and both experiences and both opinions, and we create something even better, right? And so learning how to communicate is the key to all of those things.
So good. Well, Monica, I've loved our conversation. Share where people can find you, follow you, get your new book, and dive into your world.
Thank you, Charity. Like, seriously, your excitement just like fills my heart with gratitude. So you can learn everything about my website is just my name, monicatanner.com. And then the book has its own website, which is badmarriageadvice.com. So you can go there, you can get the first chapter for free and learn how to participate in a really cool summit that I have going on around the book and all of the things. So monicatanner.com and badmarriageadvice.com.
So good. I'm curious if you had to pay a lot for the badmarriageadvice.com for the website.
You know what? People keep asking me that. And seriously, it was like a match made in heaven. Like it was the craziest thing. I jumped on, like GoDaddy and it was $7. And I'm like, how does nobody have this website? But also I jumped on Amazon and did some research and there are like no books about bad marriage advice. I'm like, I don't know. I just got really lucky.
Yours. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. You guys will make sure to have everything in the show notes. Dive on into Monica's world, grab her new book as an author. I know how much it means to support fellow authors. So I will also be grabbing a book and leaving a review on Amazon and sharing this out with everyone. So thank you so much for being here, Monica.
Thanks, Charity.
We'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers to your success.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope it brought some value and some fun into your business and life. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and even share the episode with a fellow business bestie who you know will love it. It helps us continue to attract top-level guests and reach more and more women who are on their journey in business just like you. Remember that when money gets in the hands of good women, great things happen. Cheers to your success.